Have you ever had someone in your life who made everything feel different? Someone whose presence turned ordinary moments into something electric? That was Ethan for me. We were just roommates at least. That's what I kept telling myself every single day for 8 months. But the truth was buried under late-night conversations, lingering glances, and the way my heart would race whenever he smiled at me. My name is Jamie. And this is the story of how one study session shattered every carefully constructed wall I'd built around my heart. This is about the night everything changed the night. I discovered that sometimes the most beautiful truths are the ones we're most afraid to speak. It started with a lie, a simple, innocent lie. Let's study together tonight.
But
What happened that November evening in our tiny apartment would rewrite both of our stories forever. The apartment smelled like cinnamon and old. Books, a combination that had become synonymous. With home over the past 8 months, I'd moved in with Ethan Chen at the beginning of spring semester. Practical arrangement born from Craigslist desperation and compatible cleanliness standards. What I hadn't anticipated was how thoroughly he would infiltrate every corner of my existence. I still remembered the first time I saw him. Standing in the doorway of what would become our shared space, his dark hair slightly disheveled from the wind. Wearing a vintage band t-shirt that hung just right on his lean frame, he had these eyes deep brown, almost black in certain lighting, that seemed to see straight through every defense mechanism I'd spent years perfecting. "Jamie, right?" he'd said, extending his hand with a smile that made my stomach do an unfamiliar flip. "I'm Ethan. Come on in. I think you're going to like it here." He was right. I liked it entirely too much. November had arrived with a vengeance, painting our college town in shades of amber and rust. I was hunched over my laptop at our second-hand kitchen table, pretending to focus on my psychology paper while actually watching Ethan through my peripheral vision. He was sprawled on our threadbare couch, supposedly reading for his literature seminar. But I'd noticed he'd been on the same page for 20 minutes. The golden afternoon light filtered through our half-broken blinds, creating patterns across his face that I'd memorized without meaning to. There was a small scar above his left eyebrow from a childhood fall. He'd told me once that caught the light in a way that made me want to trace it with my fingertips. "Stop it. Jamie," I commanded myself for the 1,000th time. "He's your roommate. Your straight roommate. You're completely unavailable. Probably has a girlfriend you Dan, single quotes to about. Definitely not interested roommate. You're staring again." I jumped, nearly knocking over my coffee mug. "What?" No, I wasn't. I was just thinking. About Freud. Ethan's laugh was warm and rich like honey and tea. "Freud, huh? That's what we're calling it now?" He closed his book and sat up, running a hand through his hair in that unconscious gesture that never failed to make my breath catch. "You've been thinking about Freud a lot lately." My cheeks burned. "I have a paper due. You have a paper due every week, Jamie." He stood, stretching in a way that lifted his shirt just enough to reveal a strip of skin above his jeans. I forced my eyes back to my laptop screen. "And every week, you sit at that table, pretending to work while actually watching me like I'm the most fascinating documentary ever made." I'd say, "Don't, you're imagining things." He moved closer, and I could smell his cologne, something woody and subtle that I'd learned to associate with safety and danger in equal measure. Am I, though? Before I could formulate a response that wasn't a humiliating confession, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and something shifted in his expression, a tightness around his eyes that I'd learned to recognize over our months together. "Everything okay?" I asked, grateful for the subject change. "Just family stuff." He pocketed the phone without answering the call. "Hey, are you free tonight? I could use some help with this Victorian literature analysis, and you're better at close reading than anyone I know." My heart performed an acrobatic routine. Study sessions with Ethan were simultaneously my favorite and most torturous experiences. Sitting close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body, listening to his voice as he read passages aloud, watching the way his mind worked through complex ideas, it was exquisite agony. "Sure," I said, trying to sound casual. "What time?" "How about 8? I'll order Thai food. We can make a night of it."
Out of it.
The phrase echoed in my mind with implications that definitely weren't there. Sounds good? He smiled, that genuine, unguarded smile that made me believe in things I'd given up. Ian returned to the couch, but he didn't pick up his book again. Instead, he stared out the window at the darkening sky, that same troubled expression clouding his features. I wanted to ask what was wrong. I wanted to cross the room and sit beside him and tell him that whatever burden he was carrying, he didn't have to carry it alone. But we'd never been those kinds of roommates. We had our boundaries, our unspoken rules. We were friends, good friends. But there were lines we didn't cross, at least. We hadn't crossed them yet. The hours between afternoon and evening stretched like taffy. I took a shower, changed clothes 3 times before settling on jeans and a navy sweater that Ethan had once said brought out my eyes, and immediately felt ridiculous for caring. I was 22 years old, not a teenager getting ready for prom, but when I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror, I saw the truth written plainly on my face. I was completely, hopelessly gone for my roommate. I'd known I was gay since I was 15, had come out to my family at 17, had even had a few relationships in high school and my first year of college. None of them had prepared me for Ethan Chen and the way he'd quietly dismantled every protective barrier I'd constructed. The problem with living with someone is that you see all their sides. Morning grumpiness before coffee, the way they sing off key in the shower, their midnight snack preferences, how they look when they're sad and trying to hide it. You see them as a complete person, not the curated version they show the world. And Ethan was beautiful in all the ways that mattered. Kind without being soft, intelligent without being condescending, funny in a dry, unexpected way that always caught me off guard. He left notes on the fridge reminding me to eat when I was stressed about exams. He knew how I took my coffee. He'd stayed up all night with me when I got food poisoning, never once complaining, just being there. He was also, as far as I knew, straight. He'd mentioned past girlfriends in passing, though never anyone current. He didn't date much, as far as I could tell, which I'd shamefully filed away as a positive in my mental ledger of hopeless longing. At 7:45, I emerged from my room to find Ethan setting up our study space. He'd pushed the coffee table to the side and arranged cushions on the floor, creating a cozy nest of blankets and pillows. Candles flickered on the bookshelf, the nice ones, not the cheap grocery store variety. "What's all this?" I asked, my voice coming out rougher than intended. He looked up, and there was something in his expression I couldn't quite read. Nervousness, maybe? I figured we might as well be comfortable. "We're going to be here a while," he gestured to the spread he'd created. "Is this okay? Too much?" "No, it's nice." "Too nice," whispered the paranoid part of my brain. "This looks like a date setup, not a study session." The Thai food arrived right at 8. We settled into our floor nest with containers of pad Thai and green curry, our usual easy conversation flowing around us. But there was an undercurrent tonight, something electric and uncertain crackling in the air between us. "So, Victorian literature," I said, trying to focus on why we were supposedly here. "What's the assignment?" Ethan pulled out his anthology, but his movements seemed distracted. "I need to analyze the themes of forbidden desire in Christina Rossetti's Goblin Market. The sexual subtext. The longing, He trailed off, his eyes meeting mine. "The things we want but think we can't have." The air grew thick. I swallowed hard. That's pretty on the nose." "Yeah." He didn't look away. "Professor Chen has a sense of humor about these things. We'd been skating around something for weeks now, maybe months. Those moments when our hands would brush and neither of us would pull away immediately. The way our movie nights had evolved into a sitting increasingly closer on the couch, till his shoulder pressed against mine and neither of us acknowledged it. The lingering looks that lasted just a beat too long to be casual. I'd convinced myself I was imagining it, projecting my own feelings onto innocent gestures. But sitting here now, in the candlelight, with Ethan watching me with an intensity that made my skin feel too tight, I wasn't so sure anymore. "Jamie," he said softly, "can I ask you something?" My heart hammered against my ribs. "Of course." He set down his food container, his hands fidgeting with the edge of a blanket, a nervous gesture I'd never seen from him before. Did you really think we were going to study tonight? The question hung between us like a held breath. I couldn't lie to him. I didn't know what tonight was supposed to be, honestly. He laughed, but it sounded shaky. Neither did I. I just knew I needed to talk to you. Really? Talk to you? And I'm apparently a coward who needed the excuse of a study session to make it happen. Talk to me about what? He finally looked directly at me, and what I saw in his eyes made the world tilt on its axis. There was vulnerability there, and fear, and something else. Something that looked terrifyingly like hope. About the fact that I've been lying to both of us for 8 months, Ethan said. About how I feel about you? About who I am, and who I'm trying to pretend not to be? The silence that followed Ethan's confession was so complete, I could hear my own heartbeat. Could hear the slight whistle of the radiator. Could hear the world reshaping itself around this moment. Ethan? I didn't know how to finish that sentence. My mind was racing through possibilities, through interpretations, through every interaction we'd ever had, recontextualizing them in light of what he'd just said. He stood abruptly, pacing to the window, his shoulders tense. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have God. This was stupid. You're probably straight, and I've just made everything incredibly awkward. We still have 4 months on the lease. I'm not straight. He froze mid-sentence, turning to look at me. What? I rose to my feet, my legs unsteady. I'm gay, Ethan. I came out years ago. I never mentioned it because it never came up, and you never asked, and I assumed you were straight. So it didn't seem relevant to... I gestured helplessly between us. You're gay. He said it like he was testing the words, like they were a revelation written in a language he was just learning to read. Yeah? And you thought I was straight? Yeah, Jamie. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you I'm bisexual for 6 months. Laughed. A sound caught between relief and disbelief. I've been dropping hints, sitting closer, finding excuses to spend time with you, and you thought I was straight? My brain was struggling to process this new reality. You've been dropping hints? I literally told you that sweater brought out your eyes. Guys compliment each other sometimes. That's a thing straight guys do. I made you homemade soup when you were sick. That's called being a good person. We stared at each other across the small space of our living room. The absurdity of the situation finally hitting us both at the same time. Ethan started laughing. First really laughing. The kind that came from the belly and lit up his whole face. I couldn't help but join in, the tension of months dissolving into something bright and giddy. We're idiots, he said, wiping his eyes. We're complete idiots. Speak for yourself. I was being respectfully oblivious. You were watching me like a starving man watching a feast. Jamie, there was nothing respectful about the way you looked at me when you thought I wasn't paying attention. Took a step closer. But I was always paying attention. The laughter faded, replaced by something more intense. The space between us hummed with possibility. So I said, my voice barely above a whisper, what now? Ethan crossed the remaining distance between us in 2 strides. We were close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, could feel the warmth radiating from his body. Now I stopped pretending that I didn't orchestrate this entire evening just to tell you that. I've been falling for you since approximately the 2nd week of living here. 2nd week. My breath caught. What happened in the 2nd week? You stayed up until 3 in the morning helping me study for my midterm even though you had your own exam the next day. And when I finally said we should stop, you made me tea and told me I was going to do great, and you believed it so completely that I believed it too. His hand lifted, hovering near my face like he was asking permission. Nobody had ever looked at me the way you did that night. Like I was someone worth believing in. I leaned into his touch, his palm finally making contact with my cheek. His skin was warm, his thumb brushing across my cheekbone in a gesture so tender it made my chest ache. Ethan, I breathed. I've wanted you for so long that I convinced myself it was impossible. Nothing about this is impossible. His other hand came up to cup my face, holding me like I was something precious. Jamie, I need you to know something before this goes any further. Okay, I'm not out to my family. They're traditional, Chinese, and they have expectations about who I should be, who I should end up with. Pain flickered across his features. That phone call earlier? That was my mom, calling to tell me about another girl she wants me to meet over Thanksgiving break. Understanding dawned. That's why you've been so stressed lately. I'm tired of lying to them, but I'm also terrified of losing them. He pressed his forehead against mine, and I could feel him trembling slightly. I'm scared of a lot of things, Jamie, but the thing that scares me most is the idea of not being brave enough to have this, to have you because of fear. I wrapped my hands around his wrists, grounding us both. We don't have to figure everything out tonight. The family stuff, the future, all of it, we can take it one step at a time. And what's the first step? I smiled, feeling bolder than I'd felt in months. I think the first step is admitting that we were never going to study tonight. No, he agreed, his lips curving into that smile I'd memorized in 100 different contexts. We definitely weren't. And the second step? Instead of answering with words, Ethan closed the final distance between us. The first brush of his lips against mine was gentle, questioning. Like he was still half afraid this was a dream we'd both wake up from. But when I kissed him back, threading my fingers through his hair and pulling him closer, the gentleness transformed into something more urgent. He tasted like Thai iced tea in promise. His hands slid from my face to my waist, pulling me against him as the kiss deepened. Every nerve ending in my body was firing. 8 months of tension and longing, finally finding release when we finally broke apart. Both breathing hard, Ethan's eyes were dark and full of wonder. That, he said, was step 2. What's step 3? I asked, not quite ready to let him go. He glanced at the abandoned study materials, the cold Thai food, the nest of blankets we'd created. I think step 3 is acknowledging that we're going to be terrible at productivity tonight. I'm okay with that. We settled back into our floor nest, but this time there was no pretense of studying. Ethan pulled me against his chest, my back to his front, his arms wrapped around me like he was afraid I might disappear. I laced my fingers through his and felt his chin rest on top of my head. Can I tell you something embarrassing? He murmured into my hair. Please do. I need ammunition for future arguments. I felt his laugh rumble through his chest. I've imagined this exact scenario approximately 500 times. Me and you, sitting just like this. Every single time you'd settle in to study, I'd think about what it would be like to just hold you. My heart swelled. Only 500? I've imagined various scenarios approximately 5,000 times. Yeah. Tell me about one. Well, I said, emboldened by his confession and the safety of his arms. There was this one fantasy where we'd be watching a movie, and you'd do that thing you do. What thing? That thing where you run your hand through your hair when you're thinking. And in my fantasy, I'd finally have the courage to catch your hand and tell you that I'd been in love with you for months. His arms tightened around me. You're in love with me? The question was soft, vulnerable. I turned in his embrace so I could see his face. Yeah, I said simply. I am, have been. Probably will be for a very long time. Ethan's eyes glistened in the candlelight. I never thought I'd get to hear you say that. I never thought I'd get to say it back. He kissed my forehead, my temple, the corner of my mouth. I love you, Jamie. I love your terrible jokes and your kindness and the way you believe in people. I love that you make me want to be braver. You're already brave. You're the bravest person I know. I'm brave when I'm with you. He pulled back slightly, his expression growing serious. But Jamie, I need you to understand what you're getting into. My family situation isn't going to be easy. Coming out to them, if I decide to do that, could mean losing them. And if we really do this, there are going to be complications. I touched his face, mirroring the way he'd held me earlier. Ethan, I'm not afraid of complications. I'm afraid of missed chances and what-ifs. Whatever happens with your family, whatever challenges come, we'll face them together. If you want to, I want to. God, I want to so much. We spent the rest of the night in that nest of blankets, talking about everything and nothing. He told me about his childhood in San Francisco, about the pressure of being the eldest son in a traditional family, about the first time he realized he was attracted to more than just women. I told him about my own coming out journey, about my family's acceptance that it made everything easier. about the guilt I sometimes felt that my path had been smoother than so many others. I woke to sunlight streaming through our living room windows and the weight of Ethan's arm across my waist. We'd fallen asleep on the floor sometime around 3 in the morning. Still fully clothed, wrapped around each other like we were afraid to let go. For a moment, I lay perfectly still, wondering if the previous night had been a dream. But then Ethan stirred, his breath warm against the back of my neck, and I knew with absolute certainty that this was real. "Hey," he mumbled sleepily, his voice rough and beautiful. We fell asleep. We did. I turned to face him, taking in his sleep-mussed hair and the crease on his cheek from the blanket. "Morning, morning." He smiled, that unguarded, genuine smile that was now mine to wake up to. No regrets? Not a single one. You. Instead of answering verbally, he kissed me, slow and sweet, like we had all the time in the world. Maybe we did. When we finally untangled ourselves and moved to the kitchen, there was a domesticity to the morning that felt both new and familiar. Ethan made coffee while I started pancakes, and we moved around each other in the small space with an ease that came from months of cohabitation, but now held a different weight. "So," I said, flipping a pancake, "what do we do now? Do we need to have the 'what are we' conversation, or can we skip that part?" Ethan wrapped his arms around me from behind, his chin on my shoulder. "I'd like to skip straight to the 'we're definitely together' part, if that works for you." "That works for me." I leaned back against him. "Though we should probably establish some ground rules." "Like what? Like, do we tell people? Are we keeping this private for now? I don't want to pressure you about the family stuff, but I also need to know where we stand." He was quiet for a moment, and I felt him press a kiss to my neck before pulling back. "Can we sit down for this conversation?" We settled at the kitchen table with our coffee and pancakes, and I watched as Ethan gathered his thoughts. This was one of the things I loved about him. He didn't rush into words without meaning. "I want to tell people," he said finally. "Not my family. Not yet. But I want to tell our friends. I want to hold your hand when we walk to class. I want to take you on actual dates instead of pretending we're just hanging out." He reached across the table, lacing his fingers through mine. "I've spent so much of my life hiding parts of myself, and I don't want to hide this. I don't want to hide you." My throat felt tight. "You're sure?" "I'm sure about you. The rest of it, my family, figuring out when and how to tell them, I'm going to need time. And therapy, probably a lot of therapy. But this us? I've never been more sure of anything." "Okay then." I squeezed his hand. "We tell our friends. We go on dates. We figure out the rest as we go. Together. Together." The first person we told was Maya, Ethan's best friend from his film studies program. She came over that afternoon for what was supposed to be a movie marathon and found us curled up on the couch together. My head on Ethan's shoulder, his arm around my waist. She stopped dead in the doorway, her eyes widening. Then, slowly, a grin spread across her face. "Finally," she shouted, making us both jump. "Do you know how painful it's been watching you two idiots dance around each other for 8 months?" "You knew?" Ethan asked incredulously. "Everyone knew, babe. Everyone except apparently you two." She dropped her bag and flopped into the armchair across from us. "I need details. All of them. When did this happen? Who made the first move? Please tell me you finally used the study session excuse." Ethan and I exchanged glances, and I felt him squeeze my hand. "Last night," he admitted, "and it was technically my idea, though I chickened out of calling it what it was." Maya pointed at me. "And you? What was your excuse?" "I thought he was straight." She stared at me for a long moment, then burst out laughing. "Jamie, sweetie, he color-coordinated his outfits with yours for 3 months. How is that straight behavior?" "He did what?" I turned to Ethan, who had the grace to look sheepish. "It was subtle," he defended. "You never noticed, because I was too busy trying not to stare at you." Maya watched us with obvious delight. "This is already the best entertainment I've had all semester. Please continue." Over the next few weeks, we settled into a new rhythm. We told our close friends, most of whom reacted with varying degrees of about time, and we literally already assumed you were. Together, coming out as a couple felt different than coming out about sexuality. It was choosing to make something. Private, beautifully public. Ethan took me on our first official date to a small Italian restaurant downtown. Somewhere candlelit and intimate. He held my hand across the table and looked at me like I was the most fascinating person in the world, and I felt myself falling even deeper. "I want to show you something," he said, as we walked home that night, our fingers interlaced. He pulled out his phone and showed me a draft email. "I've been working on this." It was addressed to his parents. In careful, measured words, Ethan had written about his identity, his truth, and my breath caught about me. "You don't have to send it yet," I said quickly. "Take whatever time you need. I want to send it. I'm terrified, but I want to." He looked at me, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "You make me want to live my truth, Jamie. All of it. Ever happens, I'm here." He sent the email that night, and we waited. Ethan's mother called 3 days later. I held his hand as he answered, could feel him trembling as he lifted the phone to his ear. "Mom," he said softly. "Hi." I couldn't hear her side of the conversation, but I watched emotions play across Ethan's face. Fear, pain, hope, sadness, all flickering like candles in the wind. The call lasted 20 minutes. When he finally hung up, tears were streaming down his face. I pulled him close, my heart breaking for him. "What did she say?" "She needs time," he choked out. "She's hurt that I didn't tell them in person. She doesn't understand. But she..." He pulled back to look at me, and despite the tears, there was a lightness in his expression I'd never seen before. "She said she loves me, that nothing will change that. She just needs time to process. That's good, right? That's a start? It's more than I expected." He laughed wetly. "She wants to meet you. Eventually, when she's ready." Over the following weeks, Ethan had several more conversations with his parents. They were painful, complicated, full of cultural misunderstandings and generational gaps. But they were talking. And slowly, so slowly, there was movement toward acceptance. His father called one evening in late November. Ethan put him on speaker, and I listened as Mr. Chen said in halting English, "Your mother says you have boyfriend. She says he is a good person, makes you happy." "He does," Ethan said, squeezing my hand. "He makes me very happy." "Then we will meet him. At Christmas, maybe? Your mother is already planning meals." After the call ended, Ethan buried his face in my shoulder and cried but this time. They were tears of relief. Christmas came with an invitation to San Francisco. Ethan's parents wanted to meet me, to see their son in his truth, to begin the long process of understanding the night before we left. Lying in Ethan's bed, we'd stopped pretending we needed separate rooms weeks ago. He traced patterns on my chest in the darkness. "Are you nervous?" he asked, terrified, I admitted, but also grateful. "Your parents are trying, Ethan. That means everything. They liked your voice on the phone. My mom said you sounded kind. I am kind, especially to people I love." I kissed the top of his head. "We're going to be okay. All of us." "How do you know?" "Because you're brave enough to live your truth. I'm brave enough to stand beside you, and your parents love you enough to try. That's more than a lot of people get." The trip to San Francisco was everything and nothing like I'd feared. Ethan's parents were formal at first, uncertain how to navigate this new landscape. But over the 4 days we spent with them, I watched walls slowly crumble. Mrs. Chen taught me to make dumplings. Mr. Chen showed me his garden and told me stories about Ethan's childhood on our last night. Mrs. Chen pulled me aside while Ethan was helping his father with something in the garage. "You love my son," she said. It wasn't a question. It's very much I confirmed. She studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "He is different now, lighter. You do this for him? We do it for each other." She touched my arm gently. "Then you are welcome in this family. It will take time for us to understand everything, but you are welcome." When I told Ethan later, he cried again, the good kind of tears. The apartment looked different now, filled with evidence of our life together. Photos on the walls as at Pride, at the beach, at Maya's birthday party. A bookshelf that held our combined collections, spines touching, stories intermingling. A couch we'd finally replaced, big enough for us to sprawl together during movie nights. It was late November again, and I was sitting at our kitchen table, still secondhand, but we'd reupholstered the chairs, working on grad school applications. Ethan was cooking dinner, humming off-key to the playlist I'd made him months ago. "Jamie," he called from the stove. "Can you come here for a second?" I found him standing by the window, the same window where he'd paced nervously a year ago, working up the courage to tell me his truth. He pulled me against him, and we looked out at the city lights together. "What are you thinking about?" I asked, about how a year ago I was terrified to tell you how I felt. How I thought studying together was a good enough excuse to spend time with you. He turned me to face him, his hands on my waist. "And now I get to hold you whenever I want. I get to wake up next to you. I get to build a life with you." "Best study session ever," I teased. We never did actually study that night, but we learned some important things. Like what? I kissed him softly. Like how sometimes the most important truths are the ones that scare us most. Like how love is braver than fear. Like how the best stories start with someone being brave enough to say, "This is who I am, and this is what I want." "And what do you want, Jamie?" His eyes sparkled with mischief and love and certainty. "This," I said simply. "You, us. 1,000 more nights of not studying. A lifetime of falling asleep in your arms and waking up to your terrible singing. My singing isn't that bad. It's absolutely terrible. But it's mine." "Yours," he agreed, pressing his forehead to mine. "Always yours." Outside, the city sparkled with possibility. Inside, we held each other as dinner cooked and music played. Two people who'd found their courage and each other, building a life from truth and love, and the kind of ending that's really just a beautiful beginning. Because that's the thing about love stories, the best ones don't end when the confession is made, or the kiss is shared, or the families come together. The best ones keep going. Day after day, choice after choice, truth after truth, building something real and lasting from the foundation of being brave enough to say, "I love you," and mean it with everything you are. We were just roommates once, but the truth changed everything, and I wouldn't have it any other way.